Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we dig into your research stack and deliver the strategic insights you need, tailored just for you, the curious learner.
Today, we're diving deep into arguably the most critical phase of any new venture, be it an organization, a community, anything really. The research calls it the sapling moment.
That initial make-or-break first season.
Exactly.
It's a really compelling idea, maybe even a bit unsettling. The notion that the whole future character, stability, growth might be locked in during just the first few months.
Well, the premise seems solid because, look, the data is quite sobering. Most young communities, honestly, even those starting with incredible passion, they just don't last.
Right.
They either fizzle out from conflict that never got dealt with, or they just stall. They get stuck, kind of like perpetual toddlers, never really learning to raise up new leaders from within. And the analysis really hammers this home. It's the structural choices made right at the fragile start, not years down the line, that determine pretty much everything.
Okay, so that's our mission for you today then. Let's unpack the foundations needed for that long-term resilience. How do we move past just, charisma and big dreams?
Towards strategic, intentional rooting.
Yeah.
We're looking for the actual practices that build enduring life into the thing.
All right, let's get into it. The core claim. Season 1 writes the culture, sets the stage for years. Why? What gives these early months such massive leverage?
It's fascinating, actually. The research points to three deep causes for this leverage. They explain why early messiness, if you're not careful, gets hardwired into the system. They call it formative entropy.
Formative entropy. Okay, that sounds significant. What does that mean practically?
Think of it like gravity, pulling towards chaos unless you actively, intentionally build structure right away. It's the natural tendency for things to get messy unless explicitly designed otherwise.
Got it.
So, the first deep cause driving this is path dependence.
Path dependence.
Yeah.
Small choices having huge downstream effects. Okay, give us a practical example. How does a convenient little decision in month 2 become a major roadblock in year 5?
Sure. Think about something as simple as where cream meetings happen. Let's say the founder, for convenience, hosts every important meeting in their own living room.
Makes sense early on, easier logistics.
Right. But that small choice creates a feedback loop. It reinforces itself. Later, when the group needs to grow, maybe decentralize, they struggle. Why? Because that early practice unintentionally taught everyone the founder's physical space is the center.
So convenience hardens into dependency.
Precisely. And that's why leaders have to treat every repeatable process, even small ones like legacy code, something you'll likely have to support forever.
Legacy code. I like that framing. It forces you to ask about any process right now. Is this built to scale or is it built to be deliberately retired? Because if you just let it happen, it's probably permanent.
Exactly right. You have to be intentional.
Okay, what's the second deep cause?
The second one is identity crystallization. The studies are pretty clear. Communities figure out who they really are much faster through shared language, repeated rituals, the stories they tell each other.
Faster than through, like, a mission statement written on a plaque.
Oh, much faster and deeper. It's about the how. How do you actually welcome new people? How do you celebrate the wins that genuinely reflect your purpose? And maybe most importantly, how do you handle mistakes, failures, difficult issues internally?
Right. Those moments become the real narrative.
They are the narrative. They teach people this is who we are, this is what matters here, often without anyone consciously deciding it. That's how culture gets defined, sometimes accidentally.
So if identity forms that fast, how do you stop the founder's initial, maybe quirky or even accidental habits from just becoming the group's permanent, maybe dysfunctional DNA?
Well, that ties straight into the third cause, relational network effects. The research really highlights this difference between, let's say, surface area and depth. A small group that really prioritizes deep relational density, where people genuinely know and care for each other beyond just the main meeting or event, that kind of group tends to reproduce healthy, capable leaders.
And the flip side is the danger zone.
Exactly. A larger group built mostly on shallow connections. It might look active, lots of programs, lots of people showing up, but it mainly just reproduces more programs, more events.
Not more leaders.
Not the kind of resilient leaders who can carry things forward. It lacks that relational strength. So this means prioritizing small units, call them triads, microgroups, project teams, whatever fits making relationships, the actual engine of growth, not just the big event.
So you invest in depth early in year 1, knowing that any growth that follows will be healthier, more reproducible.
That's the idea. Build deep before you build wide.
Okay, now this is where the analysis gets really pointed. The sources strongly caution against relying on the attraction model. They use this image of the founder as factory, heavily focused on the leader's charisma, big events, the spectacle. Why is that model, which often generates huge initial buzz, seen as a path to burnout and collapse?
It ultimately fails because it fosters consumer behavior and what the research terms parasocial dependency.
Parasocial dependency,
Yeah.
meaning people connect just to the leader.
Almost exclusively to the leader's persona, yeah. Not really to the collective mission, and definitely not to the other people in the room. So when the inevitable pressure hits that founder, burnout, crisis, whatever, the whole thing is incredibly fragile. The audience sees themselves as consumers, not co-owners.
Okay, so if that attraction model is fragile, what's the pivot? You mentioned moving from attraction to vocation, rooted in covenant identity. Unpack covenant for us. It sounds weighty.
It is, and it's fundamentally different from, say, a legal contract. A contract is about exchanging services, right? I do this, you pay me that. Exactly. But a covenant, that's a relational promise. It's about creating a shared identity, a shared memory, a shared future. It creates a people. So the leader's main job shifts drastically
Done.
from selling a great experience to consumers to actually forming the character of participants so they can be sent out to do the work.
Forming character, not just attracting attendance.
Yeah.
So practically, how does a leader bottle that? How do you make that covenant identity clear and actionable for people joining?
The key recommendation is to develop a one-sentence identity, something really concise, memorable, and this is crucial operational. It has to define your people, not just your programs.
Okay, give me an example.
Something like, a people known for radical generosity, practicing restorative truth-telling, and welcoming the outsider into real belonging. It defines who you aspire to be together.
And then how do you use that sentence day to day?
You use it as a filter, a yardstick. Every single activity, every potential new project gets judged against it. Does this actually help us tell that story? Does this program build generosity? Does this process encourage restorative truth? If not,
You cut it, even if it's popular.
especially if it's popular but off mission, the early stage demands fierce boundary discipline. Being crystal clear about who you are and, just as importantly, who you aren't, protects those incredibly scarce early resources: time, energy, focus.
Okay, identity set, boundaries drawn. Now, the sources talk about specific levers to really shape the trajectory. And the number one action item seems to be this intense focus on leadership formation over program delivery.
Yes, this is the core strategy: apprenticeship. We're talking deliberate life-on-life transmission of practice, of wisdom, of character, not just dumping information.
Life on life, not just curriculum on students.
Precisely. And the strategic logic they highlight is powerful. Charisma might attract a crowd, but intentional transmission is what actually reproduces capable, resilient leaders who can carry the mission forward.
And this connects directly to resilience, doesn't it? The research really emphasizes redundancy design for every key role.
Absolutely. They call it deputy design, or the two deep rule. Basically, train two capable people for every single function that's essential for the organization to operate.
Every single one. Like
Yeah.
the person who manages the small groups, the finance person, the hospitality lead.
Every essential role. Think of it as building in an insurance policy against fragility.
Why is that so critical right at the start? Isn't that just doubling the training load when you're already stretched thin?
Because it eliminates single points of failure. If that one key person gets sick, moves away, burns out, and someone always does, the whole system doesn't grind to a halt. The simple rule is, can two different people step into any critical task within, say, 30 days? If not, you're fragile. It shifts the focus from relying on heroes to building a reproducible system.
That makes sense. Avoiding that founder trap, or a superstar dependency.
Yeah.
Okay, inevitably conflict hits the young plant. It always does, right? Especially if you're actually building that relational depth we talked about.
It's guaranteed. And the research is clear. Early conflict that gets ignored or poorly handled becomes toxic. It can absolutely shred that relational fabric you worked so hard to weave.
So you need a plan before it happens.
You need conflict architecture designed and taught from the beginning. Leaders have to proactively teach and model a clear, simple, three-step conflict protocol, one rooted in restorative justice principles, not just punitive ones.
Okay, walk us through those 3 steps. How does that become a formative practice?
The aim is to actually train the community in honesty and reconciliation. So step 1 is always direct, private conversation between the people involved. Just talk to each other first. Assume good intent.
face-to-face accountability.
Right. Then step 2, if that doesn't resolve it, is bringing in 1 or 2 trusted peers, maybe a designated mediator, someone neutral to help facilitate. This adds a layer of community accountability. And only then. Step 3. If the issue persists and genuinely threatens the community's health or integrity, does it escalate to the core leadership circle? Their role is to guide the parties toward a clear, ideally written restoration plan.
So conflict isn't the end, it's a test, a crucible for the covenant.
Exactly. It's seen as a severe test, but one you have prepared for. It changes how discipline is perceived and practiced.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Measurement. We tend to track what the research labels lagging indicators, right? Things like weekly attendance, donations last month, social media likes.
Stuff that tells you what already happened.
Exactly. Rear view mirror stuff. But the analysis insists these are actually poor guides to future health. So what should leaders be measuring instead?
This is a crucial shift. We need to track leading indicators. These are the metrics that actually predict future health, future formation, long-term sustainability. The focus shifts from how did we do last Sunday to who are we actually becoming and who are we equipping and sending out.
Makes total sense conceptually, but measuring becoming sounds harder than counting heads. Give us some concrete, measurable leading indicators.
Definitely. Let's hit 3 key ones. First, track your covenant adoption rate. What percentage of your regular participants have actually signed on, formally committed via membership or a covenant pledge?
So tracking commitment, not just presence.
Precisely. It measures internalized belonging. If you measure attendance, you optimize for butts and seats. Measure commitment, you optimize for depth. Big difference.
Okay, that's practical. What else?
Second, measure discipleship coverage. What's the average number of active, intentional, one-on-one mentoring or discipleship relationships happening per established leader?
So are leaders just running programs, or are they actually reproducing themselves in others?
That's the question it answers. It tracks the transmission engine.
Got it. And the third?
Apprentice throughput. How many apprentices, people explicitly being trained for leadership roles, are hitting predefined, measurable milestones in their development within a specific time frame?
So you know who is being trained, for what, and how fast.
If you don't track that, your leadership pipeline is probably imaginary. Look, what you measure dictates where you focus your energy. Tracking formation metrics like these helps you avoid that classic trap, being large but ultimately shallow, where the numbers grow but the people don't. And ultimately, the research suggests the final, maybe toughest, test of health for this young sapling is its willingness, its actual design to give life away.
Give life away? How so?
The reports constantly reference this grain of wheat logic, Unless it falls into the ground and dies, it remains just a single seed. Pruning the plant, sending out your best people, releasing leaders to start new things. These aren't seen as failures or losses.
They're signs of health.
They're the essential sacrificial grammar of genuine multiplication. It's how the system reproduces authentically.
Wow. So a truly healthy young community isn't just focused on its own growth. It must be actively preparing people to leave and start related ventures elsewhere. The goal isn't just to be a big tree, but a forest.
Precisely. Success is measured by becoming a grandmother, not just a mother. This means leaders need to cultivate a multiplication mindset right from day one. And crucially, design structures that actually celebrate departure.
Celebrate people leaving. That sounds counterintuitive.
It is, but it's vital. Think intentional, maybe even ritualized release. Commissioning services for those being sent out, maybe providing seed funding or resources, public recognition and blessing. The goal is a conscious shift from being that fragile seedling, totally dependent on its immediate environment, to becoming a resilient, reproducing tree that provides shade and life for generations.
That's the long-term vision.
What really strikes me from all this is the sheer intentionality required. Whether a new organization thrives or withers isn't really about luck or timing or even just having a great initial idea. It seems to come down squarely to strategic choices made in season 1.
About building an architecture that actually serves and reproduces life.
Yeah. And the research really challenges that common soft launch mentality. It argues the early stage isn't casual. It's a decisive, almost sacred act of focused strategy and stewardship. In today's environment, rapid change, constant pressure, the sources basically say improvisation and just relying on founder charisma, those are fragile society luxuries.
Wow.
What actually lasts, what endures through storms, is what's been deliberately intentionally rooted. That clear covenant identity, those robust, reproducible leadership pathways, and practices designed for resilience, not just initial appeal.
So bringing it back to you, the listener, right now,
Hmm.
what's the takeaway?
Well, if these first season decisions truly sculpt the long-term character and destiny of any initiative, it forces a really critical question, doesn't it? When you look at your next project, a big formal organization, or just a small team effort, what are you actually prioritizing?
Are you building practices for durable identity, for deep relationships, for leadership that reproduces itself?
Or are you defaulting to systems that just attract temporary interest and offer surface-level convenience?
That choice you make right at the start, prioritizing clarity and structure over immediate ease, that choice will echo. The invitation here is pretty stark. Treat the first season of whatever you build next as the foundational, decisive work it truly is.